Transcendentalism began in New England in the 1830s between two religious groups. One group, called the Old Light, believed that interpretation of religion should come from reason and logic. However, another group, called the New Light, believed that interpretation of religion should come from the heart. The New Light group's beliefs eventually became the beginnings of Transcendentalism. The Transcendentalists got most of their ideas from the Puritan and Quaker religions, but also took ideas from Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. Members of the movement valued nature and believed that God could be found in forces of nature such as breezes, forests, and lakes. The idea of Transcendentalism became a movement with prominent members such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and Margaret Fuller. Each member of the group explored the movement in different ways. Thoreau moved into Emerson's land and lived on his wooded property for 2 years. He then published a novel entitled Walden, or Life in the Woods, that documented his experience. Margaret Fuller wrote the book Summer on the Lakes after a trip out west. The book then helped her get a job at a newspaper working as a book reviewer, and later wrote another book, Women in the 19th Century, which was a novel that introduced feminist views. Ralph Waldo Emerson became an unofficial leader of the Transcendentalists and gave many speeches about the subject. Transcendentalism began to spread around the United States, inspiring writers and poets such as Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson. So this is one of Dickinson's poetry collections that my family has. Dickinson was inspired by the Transcendentalist movement, so most of her poems are about the beauty of nature and its inhabitants. Another recurring theme in her poems is death, which in Transcendentalism is just another part of life. Also, like in Dickinson's poems, death is kind of described as a return to nature, so the Transcendentalism idea is kind of like we come from nature, and we make a journey, and then we return back to nature to return as another form of nature, like trees or plants.
Transcendentalism was a growing Unitarian belief system, which discarded the earlier faith in the existence of Trinity, but retained the belief in the unity of God. They believed that human beings were divine in their own right, and accepted Christ as divine in the same sense that a human being is, but not as a member of a divine Trinity. It emphasized spiritual living established by the individual, and not through organized religious institutions. All these characteristics went against the religious beliefs of the time. The basic principle of this movement is given by this quote from the Oversoul, which says, "The fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, the leadership of Jesus, salvation by character, and the progress of mankind, onward and upward forever." This time period where women are oppressed and considered inferior, this movement promoted rights for women. Margaret Fuller, for example, was a major women's rights essayist who published The Dial and held seminars to help women recognize their own intellectual capacities. The writing of this time was primarily characterized by essays and poetry, with little fiction. The style of writing was very versatile, with the genre mainly being expository and the tone critical and didactic. Most writers of this time, like Emerson, used passionate emotional appeals, pathos, as well as logical appeals, logos, along with a lot of figurative language and rhetorical devices like repetition, anaphora, anecdotes, epistrophe, and antithesis.
Hello, I am Han. And I'm Zu, and we're going to be talking to you about the major philosophers of the Transcendentalist era.
Okay, the first one was Immanuel Kant. He was a German philosopher. He believed that religion and morality do not go together, and he believed moral truth was universal, and that if religion was used to decide morals, then everyone's would be different. He also believed that the moral code that everyone must follow is called the categorical imperative. And he quoted, "Act only according to that maxim, whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law."
So an example would be stealing. So according to this code, that means that if you steal, then that means you'd be fine if everyone stole. And obviously you wouldn't want that, so it means you shouldn't steal. And there will be a picture of him somewhere on the screen right now, probably there. And fun fact about Immanuel Kant was that he never traveled more than 40 miles from where he lived and worked. And so another major philosophy of theory of his was his belief in transcendental idealism, and that's one of the major building blocks of transcendentalism. And what it is so it's opposed to realism, and realism is the belief that the human view is accurate and it corresponds to the natural world. So that means it's like what you see is actually what there is. And Immanuel Kant, however, he doesn't believe that. He believes that the human view isn't exactly what you see, and what he believed was that space, time, self, and infinity are not actually present in the world. but they're just perceptions that your mind imposes onto the things. And he calls them the phenomena and the noumena. So the noumena is the actual thing that's there, and then the phenomena is like what you perceive. And according to realists, that would be the same, because the realists believe that what you see is accurate. But Immanuel Kant believes that the phenomena and the noumena are different, because he believes that we have a perception of our world that's different.
Yeah.
Okay, so an example would be like throwing a tennis ball. So if the tennis ball was the noumena, so like the actual event, so if I threw one at Han and Han caught it, then that would be, that's what like the realists believe, because that's like, the tennis ball is the exact same as I threw it when he caught it. But according to Kant, if it was like, if I threw the tennis ball but it went through a wall of paint and he caught it and it was white, then that's like the phenomenon, because there's that perception that's always there. And we don't know what color it was before the waterfall, but we only know that it is white after.
Okay, next is another big part of transcendentalism was Hume's skepticism.
Picture of Hume right here.
Yeah, and part of his fame and importance was due to his approach on numerous fields of philosophy. Transcendentalism emerged from many sources, including the skepticism of Hume. And in the context of personal identity, Hume's skeptical claim is that humans have no sense of a simple individual impression that humans can call the self. The self is the totality of a person's conscious life. He wrote, when I enter most personally into what I call myself, I always stumble on some particular perception or other, of heat or cold, light or shade, love or hatred, pain or pleasure. He shows that humans are always taking everything into perspective and can never observe anything but without perception. And even though perception can last a short amount of time, there will always be a sense of your own personal identity. And because of the associative principles, the simple connections within the chain of your perceptions give rise to an idea of your own self. And when the idea of a soul is added to give you a stronger or more unified concept of self, it is a common abuse of notion of personal identity. And next, he defends the notion of a will that consistently responds to previous motivational causes such as motives, tempers, and circumstances. Just like how a billiard A strikes and moves billiard ball B, all things have a cause and effect relationship. And in business, politics, and military affairs, the leaders expect predictable behavior from their audience, insofar as the same motives within us will always result in us performing the same exact action. And people always have a sense of liberty in the actions that are within their will. Okay, the American identity is also another very important thingy. And what you look like, where your origins are from, and how much you make and you talk are the exterior indicators that many of us divide into one group or another. The American character is very unique combination of specific qualities. The first one is individuality, the recognition that humans have individual identities from their external appearances. The second one is resistant cooperation, a term used by Wynton Marsalis to describe jazz. It is the willingness to solve the issue of living with people we may not like. It supports the act of compromise, which is the most active principle of American life.
So the third one is freedom, and freedom is the belief that there are no artificial bounds on you and that the future is yours. It's decided by knowledge and courage, and it's never by ignorance or fear. And the fourth one is stewardship, which is the exercise of authority and power held in trust, which is tied onto responsibility of others and entitlement. And the last one is integrity, which is living according to a personal standard that one has courage to proclaim.
Yeah.
So how does this relate to the book, Into the Wild? So in the book, Chris McCandless is trying to throw away society's chains that are on him and be free and be whatever he wants and discover his individual self. So that relates to Kant's ideal, because Kant believes Kant's idea was about phenomena and noumena, and how that we have perceptions that we put on ourselves that are on everything that make the difference between phenomena and noumena. And it's arguable that Chris McCandless is trying to actually view the noumena to the best of his ability, which obviously isn't possible, but it's arguable that the society influences part of how you see the noumena, and he's trying to discover what he actually sees himself.
And this also relates to Hume's skepticism, because he says that humans are always taking everything into perspective and can never observe anything but perception, because Chris McCandless, he saw how society is on him and like wants him like to like be a doctor or like make money and like all those cool clothes and cars and things, but like he realized that it's not all about money and like your social life with other people, and it's just like trying to find out who you really are, because society is like changes who you really are in the inside, and like you don't even know.
Chris McCandless drew much of his wisdom from authors who expressed the innate desire of man to seek purpose and live dangerously. He found inspiration in authors like Jack London, Leo Tolstoy, Henry David Thoreau, and Boris Pasternak. He was inspired by Jack London's tales of struggle and hardship in the Alaskan bush, and he was an adamant believer in the necessity to experience a life full of danger and excitement, just like Tolstoy. In a letter to his friend Ron, he writes, "Nothing is more damaging to the adventurous spirit within a man than a secure future." Boris Pasternak instilled within Chris a need for purpose, which drove him to sacrifice elements of his life like familial bonds and societal ties in search of truth. He decided to take the opportunity to revolutionize his life and move into an entirely new realm of experience. He was staunchly against the accumulation of material possessions and, like the Transcendentalists, he believed in possessing a connection with nature, often prizing a relationship with nature over a relationship with another person. Chris believed that the path to an enlightened life involved reflecting in nature without any of the distractions that come with relationships in society, saying to Ron, "You are wrong if you think joy emanates only or principally from human relationships. God has placed it all around us. It is in everything and anything we might experience. We just have to have the courage to turn against our habitual lifestyle and engage in unconventional living." His retreat into nature and away from society mirrors that of Thoreau, but his journey was forged through hardship and struggle, in addition to Thoreau's prized sense of self-sufficiency. This idealistic mission for truth and purpose, characterized by a spurning of material wealth and societal constructs in an attempt to connect more fully with nature, embodies a transcendentalist mindset.
Everyone, and my name is Amrita, and today I'm going to be discussing some parts of Chris McCandless' story in relation to transcendentalism. So now I'm going to be discussing two questions. Okay, so let's just think about it. Was Chris McCandless successful in his path of finding his own identity? Was he successful? I'm going to be reading about it. There has been so much of proof given in those books, and many of the proofs have been mentioned in John Krakauer's book Into the Wild. And so in the next Into the Wild, I'm going to be telling you some facts and some quotations about Chris McCandless. Okay, let me just read it. Unlike Lear and Thoreau, Chris McCandless wasn't really fantasized about going to the wild and exploring the nature's beauty. He was more eager to find his own personal identity, the feeling of his own personal identity. He wanted to find his own identity, which he actually found it because he went into the wild. I mean, he actually connected with trees, and he was separated, isolated from his family and his well-being. And the question now comes to point that was he successful? And yes, he was, because even though the adventure of the Alaska proved fatal and he died eventually, but he experienced the richest moments of his life, which he never could have ever done when he was with his family. And so let's go back to the second question. Was Chris McCandless search for his own individual identity? Was it selfish? Because many people think transcendentalists are selfish because they leave everything and they just go and find their own happiness. But was he selfish because he left his family alone? Was he? And let's now talk about it. Because Chris McCandless was not on a gold rush or something to leave his family. He just went out to find his own happiness. He did that for his own happiness, and he knew he couldn't do that. He couldn't get that transcendentalist feeling within himself to find his own identity when he was with his parents. And because when he was with his parents, he was confined to the world, to our family, education, employment. And one after the other, they were all confining him. He was confined to the world, and he couldn't be stepped out of it. And so Now the next question says how did it affect the family? How did it affect Chris McCandless? Chris McCandless, he eventually died. But how did it affect his family? His family was first disappointed. It was his own sister who actually supported him, but his parents were disappointed. But after that, they later on understood how their son has enjoyed the best moments of his life, which he could never have done. And they actually respected his transcendentalist feelings. Let me read out an excerpt from their quotation. The finality was permanent, but the mystery of his whereabouts was discernible because Chris had recorded his 2-year odyssey with a camera, few cryptic logs, and postcards and letters to people that he had befriended along the way. The camera showed in a photograph and an earlier camera that failed to survive being buried in the desert outside of Las Vegas with 558 photos that survived his many treks during the western United States, ranging from Mexico Sea of Cortex to Alaska. During these 2+ years, Chris has racked up to thousands of miles traveling on foot, hitching rides, riding the rails, paddling the canoe to many destinations. Along the way, he befriended so many people, he learned a lot, and he found himself a very brand new experience which he could have never had. Thank you.